Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're going to get started if everyone would like to take a seat. I know we have some students who are still checking in, and so we'll welcome them when they enter. And there is some space as well up in the balcony if we are out of seats up front too. So officially, good morning. I'm Alicia Vincent, Director of the McGovern Center here at Dakota Wesleyan University. On behalf of our campus and Partners Against Hunger, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the 2016 South Dakota Hunger Summit. In his 2005 book, Ending Hunger Now, Senator George McGovern said that all religions of the earth command us to feed the hungry. Every informed person knows deep in their soul that there is no reason for a single child to cry herself to sleep with the pangs of hunger. But unfortunately, we know that there are children and parents and seniors and college students and working men and women across our state and around our nation that do feel the pangs of hunger every day. Across South Dakota, that number is 1 in 8. And in our rural and tribal communities, that number doubles. Today, we gather to raise awareness about the ancient scourge of hunger, to share ideas and information about how we end it, and to celebrate those hidden heroes among us, those heroes who take time every day to ensure that tonight our children go to sleep fed, and who make tomorrow a little brighter for others. And now to introduce Johanna Jensen. Johanna Jensen is a freshman here at Dakota Wesleyan University and our student chairperson for today's Hunger Summit.
Good morning. My name is Johanna Jensen, and I am a freshman here at Dakota Wesleyan. I am a member of the student group Universities Fighting World Hunger, which you'll hear more about later. I serve as the student representative this year for the Hunger Summit. It is my privilege to welcome our key speaker tonight, Jesse Roesler. Jesse is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and producer for the documentary Starfish Throwers, which some of us were able to view at the screening last night. The Starfish Throwers documentary, which has been screened and broadcast in more than 15 countries worldwide and is the winner of more than a dozen audience and jury awards, named the most heartwarming film of 2014 by the Huffington Post. Jesse uses his film to discuss how storytelling has the power of the immense and positive change, specifically in the fight against hunger. Would you help me in welcoming our key speaker, Mr. Jesse Roesler?
Thank you. Thanks. Cool. Hi, everybody. Sounds like I'm on. Great. Well, thanks so much for having me. Thanks to Alicia and Carly for inviting me over from Minneapolis, where I live and work. Today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about how we can get and stay inspired and how we can make an impact with that. So I'm going to be, as she mentioned, we'll be looking at a few clips from the film, The Starfish Throwers, today. And we're going to talk about how we can get and stay inspired and how we can funnel that inspiration to some good work that will hopefully inspire others and create a ripple effect of change and positive impact. And I'm going to talk a lot about how storytelling can really help us do that, how we can use story both to inspire others, but also to help keep us inspired and on track with what we want to do. So thanks again for having me. Not my first time to Mitchell. I've been here. When I was 11, we went to the Badlands and stopped off, of course, at the Corn Palace, so happy to be back. And from what I understand, a lot of you are working in hunger here in South Dakota, which is awesome to hear. Always great to be in a room of people that are working to that good cause. So before we dig into the film, The Starfish Throwers, and I know some of you were able to see it last night, but the assumption is most have not. So we're going to be looking at some clips from the film and kind of dissecting them and seeing what the meaning is there for us. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge the work that all of you are doing as you're working towards hunger. How many people are working in some sort of capacity in hunger relief in the room right now? So quite a few. That's awesome. And I think these events are so great because it gives you a forum to come together and really talk about what you're doing, and you can learn what so-and-so is doing in a different region, and there's a lot of synergies that happen there. So that's really cool. And one of the things that my company does as well, Starfish Throwers is a feature-length film, but we do a lot of video content for nonprofits and corporations, and one particular nonprofit that we work with a lot is Feeding America, who is based in Chicago, but of course has a network of about 200 food banks across the country, and I know there are some people here who work with Feeding America as a member. So I wanted to look at one quick story just to show that, hunger affects not who people always think it does. It's often families. It's not the typical conventional stereotype of who is affected by hunger. So I thought we'd share one quick story here just to look at how the work that you're doing really changes those lives.
I like to be able to explore new things as a kid, but as an adult you pretty much know everything. I'm Zoe and I live in Bangor, Maine. I live with my mom and my brother, and I'm also 11 years old. My mom works from home. She works hard for me and Zeus so we can have a roof over our head. She makes sure that we have food before she gets the food, and so we don't have to go without. During the school year, I get free lunch and breakfast. It helps my mom because it saves food so we have enough for the weekends.
Money has been tight before. It does get stressful. Working at home helps so that I know I'm here for the kids and I know that they've got what they need. But at the same time, it's not always helping ends meet the way I would hope.
In the summer, I go to the lunch program to get free lunch. Sometimes there's bologna and cheese or turkey and cheese. There's sometimes apples and carrots and celery and broccoli. And it's really fun and you can make a lot of friends there. If I didn't have the lunch program, I'd probably be really, really sad.
With the food program, Zoe's able to go get a full meal and come home and not be hungry. Being able to have that food there for her from the program has made a huge difference.
I would say thank you for the people that make it easier for my mom because they provide food for me.
I can't wait to watch them graduate from high school and college, but for right now I just want them to be happy and I want them to be able to be kids and not have to worry about the stuff that I do.
So I think Zoe's story is really, one of so many stories that we don't always get to hear about working in hunger. Oftentimes the food is dropped at a food pantry or a food bank and you don't get to see who you're ultimately connected to. So just wanted to share that and acknowledge, how amazing it is that all of you are part of that and get to help change lives in that way. So I want to talk about story and storytelling and how we can use that, kind of in our daily lives, both in just keeping motivated and inspired to do the work that we do, but also how storytelling can really create a ripple effect of positive change and positive impact. This is one of my favorite quotes. There have been great societies that did not use the wheel, but there have been no societies that did not tell stories. And that's a true story from the very beginning of time. That was the first thing that brought us together as communities. We sit around a campfire and we tell each other stories. And what's the reason for that? Why stories? Why are we telling each other stories? And I think the biggest thing is that it really illuminates a culture's values and belief systems. And it's one thing to say we stand for X, we stand for Y, and to preach about a value system or a value structure. But I think what's interesting about stories is that they're anecdotal and you get to sort of decide for yourself what the meaning of that is. And from childhood, I actually have a 3-month at home right now, 3-month-old at home now, and reading him, books. You go wow, these stories, they all have a moral. There's a moral to the story, and that's how we sort of learn about our world and how we want to be in the world and how we want to act. So I think that's a really cool thing about storytelling. And especially in modern times, I feel like we are just overloaded with information. Anything you want to learn, Google search it, it's all at your fingertips. But I think what we miss there is we want insight, and what we really crave is meaning. And I think stories are what gives meaning to all of that information and data. So I think that's kind of the power that lies therein. And it reveals that meaning without committing the error of defining it, which means when you tell a story, you're not necessarily preaching. You're saying, here's something that happened, and then you get to look at that and say, what does that mean to me? And it becomes very personal. Also, there's something known as the hero's journey. There's a man by the name of Joseph Campbell who, in probably the 1950s and 60s, was studying worldwide. He looked at stories and cultures all over the world, like 30 or 40 different cultures worldwide, and he found all of them had one thing in common. They all had a central character, a central subject, known as the hero or the protagonist, and that hero goes off on some kind of journey. Something is thrown out of balance, they go off on a journey, and they meet challenges along the way. And they're able to overcome those challenges and reach a new equilibrium. So I think when we think about the stories that we are telling and the stories that we're living, when we think about that hero's journey and we know that we're going to meet challenges, it sort of reframes your experience in a new way, and you can know to anticipate those challenges, and it makes them maybe not seem so difficult in the moment. We'll talk a little bit more about that later too. But what that allows you to do is really develop a narrative for your own journey. You can sort of map out and envision. I want to start a school lunch program. I want to do summer feeding programs. You can start to see this and plan it out and know that there are going to probably be some challenges and roadblocks along the way. But if you know that's part of the journey, you'll be ready to take those head on. And then you can ultimately lead change by living that story that you've put out for yourself. So a little bit about my history with story and how I sort of came to be making these films and telling these stories, and why I think there's a value in simple storytelling, not necessarily filmmaking, but just sharing stories with your colleagues or your coworkers or people that might want to be working towards a similar cause as you. In my experience in journalism school, it was so much of if it bleeds, it leads. The doom and gloom. You turn on the evening news, it's a lot of negativity and it's a lot of sensationalism. And so I was wondering, these storytellers that are taking control of the airwaves, they have a very narrow agenda, and it's not about positivity. It's not about inspiring someone. I mean, there might be a story on this Sunday morning news or something like that. For the most part, it's unfortunately quite negative. So what I was wondering is there a way to use story for good and to change the negative perceptions? My grandparents were an example. I'd go to their house and they had this view of the world that was sort of defined by the evening news for a while. And I'm like, well, they're actually really good people doing really good work too. Unfortunately, we just don't hear about them necessarily in the dominant media every evening in the news. So how could we reach an audience with positive stories that would ripple hope instead of this constant fear and uncertainty? And that's what sort of led me to start this project that became the Starfish Throwers. And I'll show you just a trailer for a lot of you that haven't seen it yet. It's 3 central subjects all working towards the same cause but in a very different way. And I was looking for stories of positivity that could maybe inspire others. And so this is a little overview of what it is, and then we'll look at a few specific clips from the film as well.
Some people approach an issue and say, well, this issue is too big, I can't do anything about it. But you never know what can grow from just one thing.
I had a passion for cooking, and that's the reason I took up a specialization as a chef. I was working 6 months when I saw a very old man. He was having his own human waste for hunger. I was totally shocked. So I took breakfast and gave it to that old man. He ate those so very fast, eyes full of tears, and he gave me a look of gratitude. That was a silent revolution of self-realization. I'm going to quit my job. So slowly I started feeding 1, 2, 3, 4. So far, from 2002, we could have served 1.9 million food to these people.
If they say food is love, then it's true. It is inspired so much love.
After seeing how many people that my cabbage fed, I thought, one cabbage helped to feed 275 people. Now, how many people do you think one garden could help feed? And after starting that one garden at my house, I asked my school. And then it just kind of snowballed from there.
We have 40 acres. I said, whatever you need, we can start clearing.
There will be 47 Hades Crops Gardens growing across the United States this spring.
And these are going to go to families that don't have anything. The sandwiches that you made this morning are going to be eaten tonight by people that have no place to stay.
Last year, I passed out 750,000 sandwiches. I have 10 freezers in my apartment.
The last time I slept in a bed was 12 years ago.
I sleep in a van at night, 1 or 2 hours.
And now I know I need more sleep, and I've got some health problems. Thank you very much. But if people ask me why I do this, I said, if I was homeless and I was hungry and someone brought me a sandwich, I'd say, thank you.
The joy of giving and joy of sharing is a universal thing. you can do with anybody. If that thought is penetrated among the minds of everybody, this world will be a beautiful place to live in.
When I planted that seedling, I didn't think that any of this would happen.
So that's an introduction to Katie, Alan, and Krishnan, the three central subjects of this film. And when I was looking for stories, I wanted to find people that were, doing just really good work and working towards an issue that seems unsolvable. And you might have noticed there the text is like they're fighting a battle they can never win. And that might be true for one person. One person can't solve hunger on their own, but does that mean you give up? Or does that mean you keep working and have faith that others will see you and join in and keep working? So that was sort of the question going in, is like, what motivates these people? And I think we can really look at them as leaders and see how they affect change. And so I want to look at how they do that, and also how sharing their story and the story of so many other people that are doing good work can really create this ripple effect of positive change. So I think what's interesting is that sharing these types of stories immediately connects us to a deeper meaning of why we do and what we do every day. There might be a daily thing. I know you're doing a crop walk later, and that's one small act. But where does it go from there? How does that ripple out? There's this story of these three workers. A woman is walking down the street, and she sees three workers it looks like they might be laying bricks or something, and she goes up to the first man and asks him, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Well, I'm laying brick. What does it look like I'm doing?" She's like, "Okay." I'm going to ask the next guy, "What's going on here? What are you doing?" And he says, oh, we're building a wall. Okay, so like a picture is starting to emerge here of what's happening. She finally asks the third person, "What are you doing here?" And he tells her that they're laying the foundation for the town church, and this will be where the community comes together and discuss how they want to be in the world. What are their values? What are they going to do to make their community a better place? So obviously that third person was very connected to this larger story and this deeper meaning of the task, and all of a sudden a task as simple as laying bricks has so much more meaning and is so much more rich, and you can tell that third worker was far more engaged in those daily tasks because of it. So I think stories like these help us keep that in mind when we're working very hard and doing those daily tasks. And they slowly seed really big change from one small act at a time, and I think that's the thing that you'll see in the clips that I'll share from the film today is, with Alan, it starts with one sandwich. With Katie, it's literally a seed, a cabbage seed, and with Krishnan, it's one meal. So all of these things start really small and end up growing really big, and I'm interested in studying, like, how does that happen? And so I think telling a story is the beginning of that, and it always leads to conversations that can lead to really big ideas. Like I said, the fact that you're all gathered together here today and the university is taking on this event and bringing you all together is a really special thing, and I think this is where ideas start to flow and new ideas emerge. And again, these sort of community gatherings where these stories are shared, just checking in, even if you're working at a local food pantry or local food bank, talking about the people that you help and what's one person's story, just one example of how you're changing a life can just give your daily work a whole new meaning. So when we're talking about sharing stories, what does a story look like? Let's say you're working at a food bank and you want to find a story of someone that you've helped that'll help inspire other people to give towards that cause. Like I said, every story has a protagonist or a hero, and that's who are you helping? Whose life is the work that you're doing changing? So finding someone who has had their life changed by, a meal that someone's shared. And then what happens too is, every great story has a challenge. So oftentimes those you're serving had a life event happen that, for some reason they can't provide, maybe it's temporarily. So knowing what that event is that sort of throws their life out of balance. And then a challenge that gives them, a reason to fight, to work hard. So they know that they have to provide for their children, for example. So they want to get back on track. And then there's usually an escalating challenge. What's preventing them from getting back on track? And then there's usually a moment where the hero overcomes a very difficult challenge, and that's often through the help of, a sage or a wise one. If you think of Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that moment where someone interjects and helps the hero overcome that challenge. And in that case, your food bank or your food pantry would be that role. And then that person finds a new equilibrium, means they've found a way to provide for their family and hopefully can get back on track. So those are the types of things you're looking for as you're building a story to inspire others to share with your audience. So I think if we look at, Alan and Krishnan and Katie have, amazing stories in that what they did, they started really small and it grew really big. But how did that happen? How did they inspire so many people to become part of their movement and really grow that movement exponentially? And I think the first thing that we can look at about them is this idea of authentic action. And that's a question of motivation. And I think if you look at people that are making big changes in society, you can really kind of start to see a delineation in people that are very internally motivated, meaning what they're doing comes from a really deep, sacred space, and they really believe in what they're doing, and those that are doing it because maybe they think society thinks they should be doing it, or they're doing it for money alone, or they're doing it because of some sort of external factor. It's like, is it true to who you are, or are you just being part of a system that you think you need to take part in, or it's for an external reward that really isn't going to be, soul rewarding on a soul level? And I think when you look at Alan and Katie and Krishnan, it's very clear. And I think Krishnan from India is maybe the most extreme example of this. It's authentic because of what he had to go through to do this. And this clip will talk about it a little bit. So people in India will say the caste system is more or less a thing in the past, but it's definitely still in place at a social level. It's not as clearly defined as it was, meaning there are these castes, and Krishnan is from the Brahmin caste, which is the very highest caste, and all the way down to the untouchables, which is the people that he are feeding. So as an example of how this is still in place in a social way, when he started feeding people, his family said, "What are you doing? You're throwing away your education. You're bringing shame on our family by helping these people." And so he has this, these extra stakes. When we talk about a hero that's had to overcome a lot to work towards their goal, he's this classic example of that. And I think that shows how what he's doing comes from a very authentic and internal place. So I love to look at this clip that digs a little bit more into Krishnan's backstory.
The food has two types of ingredients. One is the physical ingredients, but there is also a mental ingredient called love, which is blended in the food.
He was studying hotel management and he got a good chance to go abroad.
I was selected by one of the leading 5-star hotels in India. I was working there for almost 6 months, and seeing the dedication I had, they were supposed to send me to Europe for 4 years.
So my parents said, as you're going miles away, why don't you come with us to the temple to get all the blessings from all possible gods available?
I was driving the car that morning, and my dad was sitting in the front, and my mom and my sister were there inside the car. When I saw a very old man.
This particular person was sitting there in the roadside corner. He had all strangled hair, very dirty, shabby, and there's something yucky caught his eyes.
He was naked and he was eating his own human wastes.
He said, "Oh, take the car and go. Why are you here? This is disgusting."
I was totally shocked. Just parked my car, took a breakfast and water bottle, and gave it to that old man. He ate so very fast, eyes full of tears, and he gave me a look of gratitude. That was a silent revolution of self-realization. I started asking questions to myself. The education which I learned, the skill which I have, should I sell it just for money? I went to the HR manager and said, "Sir, I'm going to quit my job."
And everything was changed. Everything was changed, and he never reported back to that office.
With little amount of savings I had, I used to go to a small restaurant, buy 15 packets of breakfast, buy 15 packets of lunch, buy 15 packets of dinner. My dad got disturbed. We have spent so much money on this guy's education, and I have only one son. Friends and relatives of my father gave him a solution. Take me to a psychiatrist, put me under medication for some time, I'll get okay. Or someone would have done black magic for me. And he patiently came and sat near me and said, don't worry, it's just a mental disturbance you're having. We'll go and meet the psychiatrist, and most certainly you will get back from it. Is it what? I'm mentally ill? Feeding these people, helping these people is a psychiatric problem? Is that a mental illness I'm having?
We have tried to get back my son. We have failed. We have failed.
So pretty amazing, right, that they thought it was a mental disturbance that was having him feed these people. I mean, talk about a different way of looking at things. And so those are the types of things that he has to overcome to do what he's doing. Pretty amazing example of it. Ultimately, that has a happier ending once he starts getting more attention for the work that he's doing and gets a lot of support. CNN did a story on Krishnan a few years back too. His family started seeing that, wow, people actually really value what he's doing, and he's slowly sort of changing minds over there about the caste system and how that's going on. So it's like not only is he working to fight hunger, but he's really upending these, outdated notions of the caste system in India as well. So when you look at them as leaders, again, looking at Alan in particular, I think one thing about him is he's not just like working in a big nonprofit and saying we need to work towards this cause. Here's why. He's out there doing it himself, and he's out there every night. And his commitment, he's really leading by example. And this is what gets people so excited to make sandwiches for him, is that they see him out there doing this every day. He drives around in his van, like he said, isn't even sleeping at home. And also the people that he's helping, they know that he's consistent. He's going to be there every night. And what that means to them is incredible, because again, it's one thing to receive a meal, but when it's someone that's giving to you that you can tell that they care about you and they care about your outcome. And that's the thing that I didn't realize at first in working and filming Alan, is that on the surface it seems like it's about a sandwich, but that's really just the starting point for a larger conversation for him, and that's what makes the difference. He's asking, how did you get here? What can I do for you? Do you need a pair of shoes for a job interview? And then he goes out and he makes that happen. So the sandwich is really just a starting point for a relationship that means a lot more. And so the people that he's helping not only come to love and appreciate that he's there all the time, but it gives them an example to follow. And a lot of the people that he's helped get back on their feet and find work, are volunteering to make sandwiches now. So it's this really cool cycle. And I think that all comes from leading by example. So I think that's another really great thing that we can learn from Alan and from the three subjects in this film. So I love to look at a clip with Alan that kind of shows that in action.
These streets out here used to be really wild. Mr. Law is one of the people that have actually helped clean this up by giving some encouragement to a lot of different people around here. I was one of those people.
That man's been in the community since I was like 13 years old, and I'm 47 years old.
How you doing? Did you get a bus token today?
I'm just coming from wrong.
There we go. I've never been this early. Dang. This is gonna be a long night.
When they see him, you see them smile. Think of Mr. Law. He is the man. They wait on him to come. You know what I mean? They're expecting him to come.
Pair of socks, toothbrush, toothpaste, everything.
He's gone to another level to where we got us an example. And he's faithful. It ain't like he ain't gonna be here tomorrow night. He's gonna be here.
I'll be back because I have to bring sandwiches.
Some of these guys probably go days without eating. And the first thing they ask when they come in, did Mr. Law bring some sandwiches tonight?
There's some socks here too.
It's not just, I give you a sandwich and that's it. It's like, here's a sandwich. Now, what else is going on in your life that we can improve on and get your life moving in a positive direction?
I was completely broke, and all of a sudden, by the blessing of just meeting this man, my luck changed. He helped me out with a couple dollars and some bus tokens, which I seriously needed. Now I'm set up, and I got a 4-day gig, 8 hours a day. It just spreads. It's like a good virus.
You got bus tokens, sir? Right here. How you doing today?
Mr. Law was my 5th grade teacher.
He's the one everyone waits on to talk to, whether, they just need to get something off their chest or, whether they need help with something. He's like the helping hand.
Go inside.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. What's up?
He knows that the world is black. He understands that the world is white. He understands that the world turns by day and then by night. And that's how he shares and spreads his love and concern for the community.
You may never know the scope of your impact. If you inspire someone and then they inspire someone else, you could be inspiring hundreds of people with just one small action.
I'd love to key into something that the man said there. It's like a good virus, and I think that's the powerful thing about all of this work, is that it does spread in the way that we think of how viruses spread, but it's actually something great that spreads in the same way. And I think that's what leading by example can do. And much like leading by example is that big change doesn't happen all at once. We think we'd like to affect big change, and we're hoping like one action can lead to something really big. And it can, but it usually takes time, and it requires a lot of slow seeding of ideas and actions over time that will eventually grow to bear fruit. And the cool thing about Katie is it's this total literal metaphor for her. She's literally seeding change. It started with a cabbage seed for her, and she's inspiring other people. It starts with one garden, and it can grow to 80-some gardens across the country as it has for her. So I want to think about, as you're doing your work, think about how can you do small things that will seed incremental change that will grow to big change over time. And I think Katie's story is a really great example of that. So I'd love to see how Katie's doing that with her gardens.
She's had people contact her from across the country. What can we donate? Oops. She's had people contact her from across the country. What can we donate? What do you need? So it touches people, and people, you don't even realize how they're seeing it. How are they getting the information?
We picked up so many amazing team members that I couldn't do this without. It's really just grown so much, and I foresee it growing so much more into the future.
Katie was my student when I was teaching 6th grade science. Kids are always talking about going to the mall, playing their video games, texting and Facebook and all that. And Katie's talking about, well, today I'm going out and I'm going to plant 700 blueberries in my garden. Getting involved with Katie's crops is not only helping Katie, but it's helping me live my dream too.
She's got no idea how many people she's reached.
It's a total ripple effect, totally.
It was one-man army from 2003 till 2006, and now it has become a movement. We had overwhelming response from the US for people who wanted to contribute for the cause which is happening here, and we started Akshaya USA.
This organization, Minneapolis Recreation Development, is on call 24 hours a day. I don't take Christmas off, I don't take my birthday off. We don't have this big fancy building, fancy people on our board. The larger companies haven't really looked at us, but we're trying to change that a little bit now.
Every day, every night, our law spreads the word. Love one another.
The message is painted on the side of the van that he drives, lending a helping hand to people in need, especially the children.
Sounds crazy, but we all have a purpose in life, and I really believe that I'm on this earth to serve people.
The most important thing this program delivers is compassion. That's what it's all about, changing lives for the better. And I'm so lucky because I get to deliver the food.
The joy of giving and joy of sharing is a universal thing. When you see somebody in hunger and you share a food with him, that will give you an immense pleasure. The interest I have towards the society to care my fellow human beings will never go from me. Till the last breath, I will try to help them.
This is not something that's just in the inner cities and that's it. A lot of people that have always donated to food shelves are now using food shelves. These might be the best sandwiches I've seen in a long time.
It's not going to be good if people just keep saying me, me, me.
We need to see other lives, not just ours. Here, we care about you. Eat.
There's so many amazing people out there who truly are so compassionate about the cause and who really want to help other people.
Katie got a seed. I got a seed. You got a seed. You're doing this. Where did this come from? Are you going to be inspired by Katie? Are you going to go home and make a difference? Or do you just take this as another story?
Thank you for all this hard work. I appreciate this. I'm not one to take care of myself. My doctor told me, go to a gym and exercise. So I tell people that I lift weights, I lift sandwiches.
So, you can see if you look at what each of them are doing, I mean, they're all very internally motivated. When you look at how you create positive change, it comes from a very internal motivation. You're leading by example. You're not waiting in a boardroom for an approval or for funding. You're just out there doing whatever you can. It can be super small, and you're sort of seeding these things one little thing at a time. The biggest thing I think that throws people off course is there are going to be those challenges. And like I said earlier, if you look at classic storytelling, there's going to be challenges. And when you know that those are going to be there, it allows you to keep faith in the really difficult times. So I think that's really the other thing that's helped Katie and Alan and Krishanan stay the course and really build this movement, is that they have all of those things in place that we talked about, but really when they come up against a challenge, they don't let it deter them. They're thinking about long-term vision of how they're going to push through whatever challenge that is. And I think that's the other thing that stories can help us do, is to know that's just part of it. That's just part of the journey. And so when you come up against that challenge, you're like, this is just part of the deal. Let's move through it, and we know that there's going to be something great on the other side. So I think one of the things in the film is that we saw each of them come up against a really big challenge that could deter a lot of people. And so I'd love to just look at a clip here that shows what they were up against and talk a little bit about how they moved through those things.
In today's world, it's not always easy to be the different kid, the kid who doesn't follow the path of everybody else. And there's been challenges where she's had a hard time and not everybody has been open to it, and some very hurtful things have come out. This is a hard thing to talk about because I think everybody just sees the positive side, and we don't often share what's hard and what's negative. And it's heartbreaking as a mom, because the one thing I want to do is I want to protect her. Last week, Katie got a horribly nasty email. She was actually very sick at the time, so I waited to share it with her. I was just wondering if anyone is ever going to take the time to tell Katie, as well-meaning as she is with her efforts, that she is wasting her time feeding the homeless. Why not give the food grown to a much more worthy cause instead of giving it to these people in society who make conscious choices to put themselves in the position that they are in? Interview the freeloaders and you will learn that they feed, no pun intended, off the efforts of ministries and organizations who are more than willing to give them something for nothing. This does not help them and is useless waste of Katie's time when her efforts could be pointed towards more worthy recipients.
Leave extra sandwiches here tonight because I won't be able to make it tomorrow night.
Good.
How you doing?
I'm all right, man. How about yourself?
I don't know. My last day here for a while.
I hear.
So, a lot of sandwiches for you. I needed some other health things over the years, but I've always delayed everything because my job is to be on the streets helping people. If it wasn't a cancerous thing now, I wouldn't even be going in now, but I don't want to die in the next year or two.
What time you going in?
I go in Monday morning at 5:30. I'll be in there three, four days, and then talk about putting me in a nursing home for like 5 days, because they said it's a rough surgery. If someone would have told me 2 months ago I'd be going to a nursing home, I said, you're out of your mind, nursing home. I haven't missed a day in almost 40 years off the streets.
You need a break sometime, though.
But not this break.
No.
It's forcing you to rest. That's what it is.
So-
It's a forced rest.
I'm sorry?
I'm gonna keep you in prayer.
I appreciate that.
That
Appreciate that.
Yep, my wife told me to tell you that.
A lot of people are praying, and I think it's the Lord's will for me to continue. In the back of your mind, you're thinking about, what if? What if? And then who's good? That's the way. You never know. you get my number. So after one day, they said I'd be able to talk. Call me anytime. But I appreciate this, that you're going to, take care of the sandwiches here. And you got 60 tubs waiting, almost 12,000 sandwiches frozen.
I told my wife, you entrust me to do that, hey, that's quite an honor. Believe me, I'm going to take care of the people with all the love and respect that you treat them with.
Well, I know that. So it'll be strange not being on the street. That's the big thing. Take care now, all right? You take care. Say hi to those kids now.
Love you.
All right. Love you too.
Ever since we opened Akshaya USA, we've always been like, okay, when are we opening the home? Then Krishnan set a date for May 9th, but then the amount of things that, it's Murphy's Law, things go wrong when you have to meet the deadline. There would be a problem with availability of the sand, or he wouldn't find the bricks he needed, or it would rain, just any number of things. The biggest challenges have been trying to get all the certifications. So it's definitely been challenging having come this far. I mean, Krishnan has worked on this project all by himself for, I want to say 10 years. It's only the last 3 years when he's gotten so much support.
People from all over the world have donated for this cause. They have not seen the people on the roads. They have not seen this campus. Many of them have not seen me in person. So it is my moral and ethical responsibility to see to that their hard-earned money and their sweat should go to the people.
Krishnan has not slept, if I'm not mistaken, for almost 3 weeks now. It could be more. So I know that this guy is running on sheer adrenaline and it's just going to crash at some point.
So some pretty big challenges. And how do you keep the faith in the face of those sorts of things? And, in classic mythic structure and story structure, there's actually a name for it. And it's called threshold guardians. Does anybody know who these guys are? Probably not the younger people in the audience, unfortunately. It's dating me. This is from a movie called The Princess Bride. Everybody should watch it if you haven't seen it. It's a favorite in our house. It comes out a couple times a year for sure. But this is a classic example of a threshold guardian. So every great story and every great journey is going to have a roadblock. These are them personified. These are people, Wesley, the Dread Pirate Roberts, who's our protagonist in this story, is on a journey to rescue the princess, and he meets these, what seem like adversaries at first, but ultimately end up becoming sort of part of his effort, at least two of them do. And that's the thing to remember about threshold guardians, is that, critics can ultimately aid you in the end. And so I think if you can keep that in your mind and keep that positivity through those difficult challenges that you might face, that's what sort of helps you overcome them, expecting them to be there and expecting that, nothing that doesn't have a challenge or threshold guardian is even worth it. Like if you're going to do something amazing and worthwhile, this is part of that. Another great way that this has been sort of visualized is, the path to success. I mean, we're taught from a young age that it's like you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get good grades, you get a job, and it's like this straight line to success, when in reality, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, and it's a squiggly line. It's not the straight line that we're sort of taught from a very young age. And when you start to expect the squiggles in the line, you can ride them out a lot more easier than if you're like stressing out over each one. So that's just something that I think is helpful, and I think that people that really lead big change are able to take those things in stride, and they keep this in mind. The last thing that I want to look at in our time today, and I think I definitely want you to see how keeping the faith paid off for Alan and Krishnan and Katie, and I don't think we'll have time to necessarily look at that, but you can see that in the film, those of you who saw it last night. But one of the things too that, in addition to just expecting threshold guardians and expecting challenges to come your way, is to have a story in mind that you can refer back to and say, well, because of this, I can stay motivated. And for Katie and Alan and Krishnan, it's sort of the theme of the film, The Starfish Throwers, is the starfish story. So I'm going to play this clip for you, and you can kind of see how that story is relevant for what they do, and probably relevant for what all of you are doing too.
I also found that a lot of mentally ill people and the old people had long hair on the road. So I approached local barbers with a humanitarian touch. The barbers were bringing big knives, big scissors. The mentally ill people took them as strangers and they did not cooperate. The barbers were running on the east side and mentally ill people were running on the west side. I thought, what is going to be the solution for this problem? So I took 6 months of intensive haircutting training, and so far from 2005 to 2012, I would have given not less than 3,000 to 4,000 haircuts for people on the road. What I do is alternative days, I find these people, I bring them back to the kitchen and give them a proper haircut, a clean shave, wash them, and a change of dress will be given to them. That will give them a lot of satisfaction and joy.
Once upon a time, near the convergence of land and sea, there lived an old man. One day, walking along the shores he knew so well, he looked back on his life and he felt a cold tingle of regret. As he sank his toes deeper into the sand, he saw a figure further up the shore. A girl appeared to be twirling and dancing. Walking closer to investigate, he found her amid a field of stranded starfish. She would bend down, scooping up a star in each hand, then unfurl her arms, spinning, returning the creatures back into the waves. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I'm sending the starfish back into the sea. If I don't, they'll die." "But there are thousands of them," he said. "You're wasting your time. You can't expect to make a difference." The girl looked up and down the beach to see thousands more starfish, stranded in the sand. Her chin dropped, and she felt the sea spray settle on her shoulders. She bent down and picked up another starfish. She turned, twirling, sending it back into the calm surf, this one flying further than all the others. "Well," she said, "it made a difference to that one."
So I think the starfish story really illustrates, when you get discouraged, you can just reframe your perspective and look at what you're doing a little bit differently, and that can help you stay the course in the face of something that seems maybe unsolvable for you as an individual, but does that mean you should stop, or does it make a difference to that one person, and is that enough, and will that in turn maybe inspire others to do the same thing, and all of a sudden it ripples out and there can be really big change. Like I said, it's in the film you kind of see how this happens, and I encourage you all the way. It's on Amazon Prime. If you're Prime members, you can stream the whole thing if you didn't see it last night. But seeing them overcome those challenges and what happens is a pretty great thing. So it's sort of I'll have to skip this real quick. Seeing how these things can really ripple out. This is just one of the things that we were so fortunate to see as we took the film around the world. In 2014, it started playing film festivals, and we were able to visit a lot of those festivals. And we got notes from people after we visited that someone was starting a garden in Bulgaria, or someone was starting a sandwich program in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. And sharing these stories is what really creates that ripple effect. And that's sort of the key theme that emerges here, and that we saw with their stories, is that our individual our impact does not end with our individual action. So like with the crop walk today, that's one small act, but that's not where the ripple ends. And I think that's sort of the magical thing about this. So what I'd love to do is sort of challenge all of you to think about, what's your starfish? Like, what's your one thing that you want to focus on? And I know you're all working in hunger, but even within that, you can think about, like, is it access to food in general? Or is it nutrition education, helping people make healthier choices? Child hunger is really its own issue. I know you're going to be talking about summer feeding programs later today and school lunches. feeding the elderly, eliminating food waste. Someone asked yesterday at the screening, like, can we actually solve this? Do we have the resources to do this? And in this country, I think absolutely we have the resources to do this. The unfortunate part about it, and there's another great documentary I'd encourage you all to look at called Just Eat It, a food waste story, that shows, unfortunately, we waste a ton of food. And so I know nonprofits like Feeding America are working with big corporations like Starbucks, for example, to stop that food waste and say at the end of the day, let's not get rid of all those sandwiches and throw them away. Like we can redistribute those through food pantries and through banks. So there's a lot of interesting initiatives just starting to take place to help eliminate that food waste. So that might be something you want to focus on. So those sorts of creative partnerships with other organizations, corporations, for example. How can we use the assets of our community, or what the gentleman from Thrivent was saying yesterday, like how can we bring generosity to our roles in our work lives as well? And then just maybe you want to look even beyond hunger, like stabilizing lives beyond just the food part of it, because that's usually one part of a larger story. Is it access to health care? Is someone just having a hard time finding placement in a job? Do they need training? It could just be access to education, affordable housing, even access to transportation. You might have saw in Alan's story how he's handing out tokens, and those are bus tokens. That's a big part of the issue for them as well. And for them, it's not just transportation to a job, but in Minnesota, that's how they stay warm at night. So there's just a ton of things, and I think that breaking a big issue down, like hunger, into these smaller pieces makes it seem more attainable to actually affect change. So I think breaking these things apart can help us see like where we can really make an impact. So to sort of recap what we've been talking about, I think if you define a vision, you find what your focus area is, and you set an intention and really dig into that. And then, as Gandhi said, of course, be the change, and they're all leading by example, but then also like tell stories that embody the change you want to see. You can be the change, but you can also tell stories that get others inspired to join you in that effort. And remember, everything big starts really small. One seed, one sandwich, one meal. And then keep the faith. There's going to be those threshold guardians, like there are those challenges, but when you know they're there, you should have no problem working through them. There's no resolution without a conflict. It's just part of the story, part of the journey. And always remember that your impact will reach further than you know. That's kind of the magical thing about this is, Alan will never know how many people were inspired by seeing his story worldwide, and how many sandwich programs have started because of someone seeing his story. So you really never know where that ripple ends. And I think Katie maybe put it best when she said, you never know what can grow from just one thing. You could be inspiring hundreds of people with one small action. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for being here. And I think we probably don't have time for questions now, but feel free to come see me afterwards. And I've got a few DVDs too if anyone's interested. But thank you for having me, and stay in touch, please.
Jesse, thank you again for sharing these inspiring stories with us. Before we head out to our breakout sessions, I have 4 important announcements. Number 1, if you need help or have any questions throughout the afternoon, make sure you find someone in one of these red crew necks. We're here to help. Number 2, in between sessions, we encourage you to stop over to Wagner Chapel just across the hall, or to the second floor hallway above us to check out our partner and student exhibits. There are lots of displays, activities, and information about their work and the fight against hunger at these tables. Make sure you find some time to check them out. One special invitation we'd like you to check out is the MTI booth right upstairs. They're doing a special presentation at their table in about 5 minutes, just before you go to your session. Number 3, if you are planning on attending our Empty Bowls luncheon today after the breakout sessions, please be aware that the bowls can be purchased in Wagner Chapel, like I said, just across the hall. There is a $10 suggested donation to purchase a bowl of soup, and then all the proceeds will go to the Mitchell Area Food Pantry. We are asking that you stop in Wagner Chapel first, purchase a bowl, and then get in line for the buffet. In Wagner Chapel, you'll also find a silent auction basket set up for your bid. If you have any questions, please ask one of our staff or student volunteers. Number 4, at this time, I invite you to take a look at your schedules. At this point in the day, we will have 2 options of panels to attend. In the East Main Dining Room, we have a panel of community garden practices. In the Knox Conference Room, we have a panel speaking about senior support and nutrition. Both rooms are located on the 2nd floor just above us. Please also be aware that the DW Campus Ministries is hosting chapel in this room right after or during your breakout sessions. So important thing, please take all of your belongings with you to the session as students will be coming in here for chapel. We will return here to this room again for lunch at noon. Thank you and enjoy your breakout session.